this is my review of that time I got reincarnated as a slime. Okay, so this episode finally showcases the fight between Rimuru and Clayman, which I believe takes up the next 3 episodes or so. So it goes on for quite a while. But yeah, long story short, it kind of just kickstarts this whole final arc where Rimuru kind of finally becomes a demon lord, and to do that he has to kind of go through Clayman. And to start off the episode, after Azure actually introduces all of the people that have attended Walpurgis, including Rimuru himself, Dagrul, Dino, and everybody else, Clayman then proceeds to go into a big pre-rehearsed speech, claiming that Rimuru and Carrion are actually working together, which is against Demon Lord rules. He also goes on to explain how Rimuru had slaughtered a bunch of humans, which is also kind of monstrous. And a whole bunch of other, and just goes on a whole big tirade about how Rimuru has just kind of committed all these war crimes, which aren't really true. And Clayman and Rimuru is very much aware of this, and eventually Rimuru just gets up and using magic produces a holographic uses a magical recording to prove that Clayman is full of shit. Basically, he just shows a clip of Clayman's forces all being wiped out. And even continues to also point out that Clayman, and while he's watching it, that it seems that Clayman is being manipulated as well. And points out that is definitive proof that Clayman's army has fallen. Which Clayman doesn't really believe. Even continuing onward to try and call Rimuru out on more things, pointing out that he also killed Mulam and again a whole bunch of other things that aren't true. And again Rimuru calls him out on it, and eventually it's Dagrul of all people who gets up and tells Clayman if he can substantiate his claims, and points out that obviously Clayman is spouting a whole bunch of nonsense about and asks him to elaborate on what some of his points mean. And it's clear that he wasn't really expecting anybody to actually call him on it other than Rimuru, so it kind of throws him for a loop a little bit. So he tries to backtrack, explaining how he actually believes that Rimuru is actually using Veldora's power to actually hide behind, so that he can claim to be more powerful than he is, and that he's actually a weakling. But Rimuru just kind of points out that he and Veldora are friends, and also points out that he's really not, that he doesn't really care about the whole status of Demon Lord thing, and then proceeds to kind of delete the table in the middle of the room, and then gets into the center and declares what he actually stands for. That he wants to create a world of peace. He wants to create a peaceful life for himself and all of his friends, and that means working with humans, and also more to the point, that anybody who actually gets in the way of that, be them human, demon lord, monster, dragon, whatever, he will kick their ass. Basically, that's and then he points out that includes Clayman, who is currently on Rimuru's shit list. So, Clayman tries in vain to actually try and convince everybody that what Rimuru has done is kind of terrible and that he needs to be taken out immediately. At which point Rimuru finally figures out what Clayman is doing, that he's actually trying to use his ability by using through the pre-rehearsed speech that he's been spouting off. And Rimuru even asks Guy Crimson if that's even allowed, which Guy points out is not, and that you're actually supposed to talk truthfully at these meetings. So with that, everybody Guy Crimson then proceeds to try to appraise Rimuru and see if he's actually worthy of being called Demon Lord. And then proceeds to point out that if Rimuru is indeed a Demon Lord like he claims, that he should actually go off and fight Clayman and actually defeat him to prove his worth, which Rimuru is all too happy to do. And although although Clayman does have one ace up his sleeve, which is obviously that he is currently mind controlling Milim, who then urges to get up and who actually joins the fight, which Rimuru realizes is kind of a problem, since obviously he wanted to fight Clayman directly, but then even points this out, that Clayman is obviously hiding behind Milim because he's afraid of Rimuru. And even points out that he's a little afraid of actually fighting Milim, because obviously Milim is tough. Milim is a tough opponent. He only really beat her like once, and even then he didn't really quote unquote beat her. He just kind of gave her some honey and she became his best friend. So not really going. I don't know if you would really count that, since he yeah, Rimuru kind of deflected that early, so he doesn't really have much faith that he'll actually be able to fight Milim again. But he does point out that he's more than happy of fighting her, since it means that since he was actually planning to save her from Clayman anyway. And then voices his concerns about actually fighting Clayman directly, though. And points out that one of his subordinates will actually deal with it. At which point, Shion just kind of runs up and throws a volley of punches that knocks Clayman on his ass, and then after the fact asks Rimuru if that was okay. And which Rimuru does point out probably wasn't. But Clayman is kind of pissed off, and he's completely fine because he has infinite regeneration, which means he can just heal any damage that was done to him, regardless of how much he was actually hurt. At which point Clayman and Rimuru proceed to face off and assemble their forces. So Rimuru obviously has Shion and Ranga with him. And then Ranga on top of that summons two more Tempest Star Wolves, which to actually help out fight against Clayman, who summons his own golem thing called Viola, or as he explains later in the episode. As well as Ninehead, one of his five fingers, and is the pinky, presumably, as it's explained. But and then on top of that, Ninehead actually summons another two beasts. Which with Milim, Rimuru quickly realizes that he's one person short. But before he can actually protest, Guy Crimson then proceeds to start the fight and creates a barrier around all of them. Yeah, and which point the fight itself actually takes place. With Rimuru is just barely able to dodge against Milim because she's very, very fast. And he quickly realizes that if he isn't quick on his feet, he'll quickly be dead, because she can easily kill him with one punch. So he knows that he's not standing much of a chance against her. Meanwhile, while Ranga's facing off against Ninehead and her two monsters that she summons, and Shion is outnumbered and is forced to fight Clayman and Viola by herself. At which point, after watching the fight for a bit, Beretta actually declares that she would like to fight. So Rimuru appeals to Guy Crimson to actually let Beretta in on the fight so that they could actually join in, but Guy Crimson kind of refuses at first, which annoys Rimuru a little bit, pointing out that obviously Milim got involved, but Guy Crimson merely kind of goes against that, pointing out that she clearly has her own reasons, and it obviously isn't going to matter all that much. But in any case, Rimuru insists that Beretta actually join in on the fight. At which point, but to this point where Guy actually brings up Beretta themselves, which is that he doesn't feel like Beretta is actually fully loyal to Rimuru at all. Pointing out that obviously Trainee is a very loyal, compassionate person and would actually follow Rimuru to the end of the earth, but it clearly looks like Beretta is actually stuck between two masters and is kind of indecisive about who to follow. And Beretta doesn't deny that at all. Beretta just walks up to Guy Crimson and points out that yes, she does kind of serve under Rimuru, but mainly because Rimuru was the one who created them. But also points out that she's under Rimuru's direct orders to serve under Rimuru and follow her orders to the letter. So anything that Rimuru wants, obviously Beretta will follow. And also in the process that this actually addresses Guy as his demon name, Primordial Red, which he annoys him a little bit, and he points out that she can just call him Guy. And then points out that she doesn't seem afraid of him at all. I mean, wonders what their lineage is. At which point, Beretta just explains that they're actually a greater demon, and one of their lineage that doesn't really work all that is kind of she hasn't really met anybody from her lineage. But does point out that she is a very fanatical servant, and also points out that she's actually been looking forward to working under Ramries because she's been researching a lot under Ramries, and that is the thing that she enjoys the most. At which point Guy finally figures them out and decides that Beretta can't actually join in on Ramries' request. And also because Ramries particular that she wants everybody to just be friends. So Guy just decides that it would actually be perfectly acceptable for Beretta to get involved. So Beretta kind of jumps into the barrier and joins the fray. But in the process, Guy actually figures out that Diablo is actually working under Rimuru. And knowing that Diablo is one of the primordials, specifically the primordial black, she realizes that Rimuru is most likely a far more interesting individual than he first realized if he has a primordial demon working under him. And he should know from personal experience because he's currently has 2 of them working under him as well. So he knows from personal experience that this is gonna be that if you have a demon working under you, and a primordial demon at that, you're probably a pretty special person, and decides that he'll actually remember Rimuru's name regardless of whether or not he wins the fight. So he kind of decides that Rimuru is actually a pretty interesting person to keep an eye on. But in case back in the fight, Rimuru is still trying to evade Milim's punches. And also in the process, kind of stops to watch Clayman, Viola, and Xion fight a little bit. And does point out that it is still a little bit unfair that they're unmatched. But once Beretta joins the fight, it's stating that they were given direct orders by Ramries and Guy to actually assist Rimuru in the fight. Rimuru then just immediately instructs Beretta to go help Xion and make the fight against Clayman a little bit more even. So they go to do that. At which point Rimuru, now realizing he no longer has to worry about Xion, especially since Xion is pissed. He realizes now that he no longer has to worry about Xion being outmatched. And he now realizes that he can now focus solely on Milim, and has Raphael actually run an appraisal on Milim to actually figure out what kind of spell Clayman is using so he can break it. But Raphael actually can't find anything, which is odd and interesting. And when Raphael tries to voice their point out that why they can't find anything, Rimuru just kind of tells them to shut up, pointing out that that's not really all that helpful. And that if Raphael can't actually read Clayman's magic, then he stands no chance of actually freeing Milim from it. At which point he realizes he'll need to find another strategy to actually wear Milim down. At which point Raphael actually suggests he uses his ultimate skill Beelzebub to actually drain her little by little, so that he can actually kind of weaken her long enough until the spell wears off. Which he does. As he's actually dodging Milim, he starts using Beelzebub to drain some of her stamina, which works a little bit. It's to the extent where you can actually see Milim kind of snapping out of it a little bit. So, and eventually after a couple of rounds of those, he decides to actually go in when he realizes Milim is open for an attack, and just kind of tries to flip her. Which doesn't work because it turns out Milim was actually preparing for a sucker punch, and after Rimuru realizing too late that Milim is actually going to attack him and he's going to die, he lets her go, but it's too late and she's about to punch him in the face, but she doesn't, and for good reason, I guess, because right at that exact moment, for whatever reason, Veldora just shows up and takes a blow to the back of the head for Rimuru, which doesn't really add up, and Rimuru is a little confused as to why exactly that happened. But Veldora just kind of takes a blow to the back of the head and is somehow completely and utterly fine. But yeah, regardless, Veldora has. It's not really explained why Veldora is there. He just shows up. But in any case, yeah, this episode is kind of interesting. So it is mainly the fight between Rimuru and Milim, and also Rimuru finally confronting Clayman after all this time, since obviously Clayman has been built up as the main antagonist for the past 2 seasons. This has been a long time coming. So yeah, now we're actually finally here, and it's kind of interesting. And obviously Clayman isn't doing any of the actual fighting himself. Obviously Clayman is using all of his abilities to just kind of cheat the system a little bit, so he doesn't have to get his hands dirty. He summoned Viola to fight against Xion, so that he can just kind of sit back and relax while Xion kind of fights Viola. And then on top of that, he summoned Ninehead to fight Ranga, and then had Milim take care of Rimuru. So yeah, Clayman isn't really doing anything, which is pretty fitting considering he's literally a marionette master. That's his entire title, his entire thing. But yeah, it makes perfect sense that he's not fighting. It's completely in his character that he would have other people fighting Rimuru instead. But in any case, that's my review of that time I got reincarnated as a slime. What'd you guys think? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below, or over on my Discord server, link in the description. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, be sure to follow me on Twitter in the description below. If you want to keep up to date with what's going on with the channel, then I would actually recommend going to follow me over there, so you actually see all the news and stuff that I post over there. And also, be sure to check out my Patreon if you want to help support me. It's only a couple bucks a month. It really helps me out. Again, link is down in the description and also on the end screen. So if you do want to help support me, by all means, go check that out. And finally, if you want to see more content from me, there's actually 2 ways you can do that. One is by checking out my Twitch. Schedule permitting, I stream every Sunday, 2:30 Eastern Standard Time, so be sure to go check this out down in the description. And I'll just be sure to follow me over on Twitch so that you actually get the notification when I actually go live. And the other way you can actually see more content from me is by checking out the videos linked in the end screen. The top video is the most recent video. It may or may not be this one. Whereas the bottom video is the video recommended to you based on what you've already seen from me. So, if you want to try something new, or see more of what you like, then be sure to check both of those videos out. But, regardless of whether or not to do any of those things, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace!